This quick tutorial video will introduce the Storm Hazard Projection tool. We're going to access this tool right now from our dashboard. By clicking here, we can look at a new simulation, and we're going to show you how you can run a simulation on demand using the Storm tool. Okay, the Storm tool has two settings, hurricanes or nor'easters. We'll start with hurricanes. For a hurricane, you have two ways to create your custom storm simulation. Option 1 is an advanced option. This requires you to input some key information about the hurricane. Those pieces of information are the following: latitude, longitude. Basically, this designates the location where the hurricane is going to make landfall. I can slide that by clicking and holding down on this arrow and moving it to the desired location on the coast. The second feature in the advanced setting is the angle at which the storm hits the coast. I can adjust that by grabbing the head of this arrow and spinning it back and forth, or as you can see, I can use the slider bar to adjust the angle, or I can type the angle here. Similarly, I could just type in the latitude, longitude. You'll notice that there are only limited angles with which hurricanes can actually strike the New Jersey coast, so the arrow is limited to that range and that range only. And then finally, things like translational speed, the pressure differential between the eye of the hurricane and the atmospheric pressure, the radius of maximum winds. All of these settings can be adjusted and input based on information known about the hurricane. However, we recognize that most users may not be familiar with these types of parameters when experimenting with storm simulations. For these users, we encourage the Basic tab. When you click here, we have created an interface that will simulate storms of a given category 1 through 5 based on the Saffir-Simpson scale used in hurricane classification. Simply click the intensity of the storm and again specify the latitude and longitude where it makes landfall. You don't need to worry about angle or any other settings, simply category and location. Now once you've done this, you can also play with other scenario features when running your storm simulation. This includes using your slider bar or typing to enter a level of sea level rise you'd like to consider in the simulation. You can consider whether the dunes and protections along the coast are in their current form or if they've been degraded or compromised in some other way. Degraded means that 50% of their elevation is lost. Compromised means the entire dune system is removed. And finally, you can look at tides. Are the tides coming in at high tide or typical tides, or are there no tides at the time the hurricane makes landfall? These settings, again, can all be toggled with this interface. Finally, you are presented with the options to consider what kind of analysis you want to run. Deterministic analysis will take the storm settings above and run exactly that scenario for you. If you pick one of the probabilistic settings, you'll get something a little different. There will be a large collection of storms with similar characteristics run at the same time. Because hurricanes are highly unpredictable and can change their course sometimes quite dramatically, this allows you to learn from the system, meaning that NJcoast goes and tries to imagine all the ways that a storm that in this case was a category 3 with 3-foot sea level rise at this location might vary and change in its track and parameters to produce perhaps some dramatically different effects. So by picking probabilistic expected, you will get the average of all of those different possibilities presented in your map. And by picking extreme, you will get the worst case storm that NJcoast could find that satisfies the category 3 requirement at the location you specified. You can play with time to landfall to also see how this information would change depending how far out the storm is at the time of the forecast. Storms are far more uncertain when they're many hours or days out. So sliding this bar to the high extremes up to 96 hours lets you see how much uncertainty there is in the storm track that far out, and going to 0 lets you see exactly what the storm would be like prior to arrival when the predictions are quite accurate. Again, these kinds of variations are only relevant or active when you pick one of these probabilistic options to explore how the storm might change as it approaches in landfall. Again, deterministic will just run the scenario as is. Once you make your selections for the different scenarios and storm features, you hit Perform Calculation. You'll start to see a progress bar appear with a timer. The timer is approximate, but it will give you an idea of how long that simulation will take to run. Keep in mind that one such simulation of a hurricane at this level of accuracy would normally take about 1,000 hours on a traditional desktop computer. However, thanks to NJcoast, this will be executed in just minutes. Once a simulation is completed, the Perform Calculation button will become active again and the bar will disappear. You'll also note that Save Results button is now active. All these things indicate that your simulation is done. Again, the best signal of that is the fact that the status bar is gone. The simulation results can be accessed and viewed just to verify them using these checkboxes. Checking here will turn on the wind field. Checking here will turn on the storm surge, giving you a heat map or a contour as the possible views. So there's the heat map version. And then here's the storm contour version, which is an alternate display. The contour version provides a little bit of a finer line interpretation of the storm surge in that event, with the black line indicating 0 feet of storm surge at that location, the yellow line indicating the storm surge is approximately 3 feet at that location, the orange 6 feet, and the 9 red feet. This indicates then that anything between the yellow and orange line, for example, has between 3 to 6 foot of storm surge. Anything from the black to yellow line has 0 to 3 foot of storm surge. And anything inland of the black line, for example, right here, is dry. The last visualization available is the run-up that gives the indication of how far damaging waves might be running over land. Those appear as a different set of lines colored in blue and green. And we can see here the green line indicates where the breaking waves, limit of moderate wave action, 1.5 foot or higher waves would be. And the blue line indicates the full extent with which waves will be running up over land in this event. So you can see here it's stopping just short of where the homes are in this particular simulation. You can save the results of a simulation by designating a name and a description in this box after hitting the Save Results button. So you can do that as well as some description, and hit save, and now that's permanently saved in your system. You can also import the results immediately to a map that you're working with, so it can be loaded in with other simulations to view side by side. The other key feature is noting that the Run New Simulation feature in the Storm Hazard tool, when you come here, you can also simulate a nor'easter. Simply drop down to the nor'easter menu shown here, and now you'll see 3 strengths of nor'easters. Strength 1 is the weakest nor'easter with wind speeds that are in the 50 mile per hour range. Strength 2 is in the 50 to 60 mile per hour range, and strength 3 is over 60 miles per hour. Since nor'easters do not have a category system like hurricanes, NJcoast provides this simple strength intensity based on wind speed to organize the data in the data set and view the results. When simulating a nor'easter, you have the ability to again specify sea level rise and consider whether the tides come in at high, typical, or no tide when looking at the results. But again, making those selections and hitting Perform Calculation will initiate the exact same interface that you saw for hurricanes, with a status bar coming and giving you an updated tracking of how long it will take for the simulation to run. When the simulation concludes in a few minutes, you'll be able to plot the wind field and storm surge in the same way as a hurricane. We do not have the wave run-up completed for nor'easters because that type of data was not available from the Army Corps of Engineers to enable us to do that additional analysis. But at minimum for nor'easters, you can use this interface to get some indication of the impact of these storms on the coastlines of New Jersey.